for us to delve into the world of cinema, both here in Korea and beyond. It is our Friday feature movie spotlight, reviewing the latest releases. And that means we have our critics joining us as well. First, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello.
Hello, Django. Good to be here, as
Great
always.
to see you too. And we have Darcy Paquet with us as well. Hello, Darcy.
Hi, it's great to be back.
Okay, so we will be previewing the Cannes Film Festival later, but first we have a review. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has returned to theatres once again with the third and possibly final instalment of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, that is the full title, sees the return of its stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, among others, and the voices of Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel as well. Jason, it's already sitting comfortably atop the Korean box office, but for those who perhaps aren't familiar with the franchise, can you give us a quick recap and explain a bit about what distinguished the first two films?
Sure, yeah. It's based on one of the lesser-known Marvel comics, Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's the brainchild of, James Gunn is, the director. He's essentially he's very much behind these series of films. He's, one of these kind of rare, I guess, directors within the MCU universe who's able to kind of leave his or her own mark and do it in a way that pleases fans and critics alike.
Sure.
And so in terms of, the films, they focus on this rather eccentric group of characters. You've got a raccoon, a tree-like humanoid, a green woman, and they come together, of course, to save the universe, as the superheroes do in Marvel style.
Sure.
Gunn's kind of affection for the characters. He's generated a bit of controversy over the years as well. But certainly he is a gifted director. I like him as a writer. In this kind of third installment, he brings it in a sense to a close because he's entering a new chapter. He's kind of he's wrapping up MCU. Well, his work working in the MCU universe and going on to work in DC Comics. So and their film adaptations. So I'm quite curious to see what he does because DC Comics is it's kind of the series of films that hasn't really got off to a great start, and they've never really recovered. You got one or two films that are kind of decent, but
Superman apparently is what he's going to tackle over there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very curious. Yeah, and Superman's one of these kind of, we've seen these films over the years. The kind of reboots.
There's certainly been a mixed bag of results for the Superman films.
Sure.
Let's say.
So curious to see what he does with those films. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, going back to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Darcy, can you tell us a bit more about the plot of this new film? Because we covered the previous kind of road that's led up to here so far.
Yeah, this one really does focus on the raccoon character, Rocket Raccoon. And I mean, in some ways it's an extended backstory to how this character came to be and came to talk and to be so smart, which, involved a bunch of experiments and, this kind of arch-villain character who has plans of creating kind of a superior species and superior race. At the start of the film, there's this sudden attack on the community, on the raccoon in particular. And while trying to save him, they realize that there's some kind of like a kill switch that's been installed within him by somebody in the past. And, it was this arch villain who did that. And then, so in order to save his life, basically, they need to kind of break into this foreign planet. They need to steal the code, enter it in order to save their friend. But basically it's a story about trying to, this group of characters who's trying to save their friend.
Right, so Rocket's really at the heart of this film. Jason, we've previously talked about superhero movie fatigue, that audiences and critics alike are perhaps getting tired of the same old fare.
Yeah.
So then what does this film do for that fatigue then? What did you make of it?
Yeah, no, certainly MCU has peaked. I don't think there's any doubt now. Even this film, it's not doing as well in America as it, they're expecting it to. Actually, I think it suffers from some of the problems of the MCU universe. It certainly you've got the special effects, and it just as you're watching them. And to be fair, Guardians of the Galaxy, the overall aesthetic is somewhat different compared to many of the other films. But still, you've got spaceships, you've got just kind of CGI overload, and it just feels very kind of Marvel, and you do feel somewhat kind of exhausted. That being said, I think what has worked quite well for Marvel over the years, and particularly with the Guardians of the Galaxy, are the characters. It's that kind of affection you have for them, and bringing it to its close, or I guess there'll be another film. Exactly. But I think that certainly, Gunn's kind of, trilogy of films here, it feels unique. It's certainly entertaining. It's got a great soundtrack. He's having fun with the characters. He's having fun with the storytelling. Yeah, it doesn't break any new ground. We've seen it all before. But, Rocket is a really fun character. He's got his charm. And actually, the film is pretty horrifying in places, And so, yeah, that emotional connection works really, really well. And I think some people who are fans of the film will get behind it in a big way, whereas others who are less keen on the films, this isn't going to work for them, I don't think.
What about you, Darcy? What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'm someone who has really followed all the Marvel films in detail. I think among the Marvel films, this is I think most people would probably agree that it's been a more successful corner of the universe, and because of the characters, because it the humor, and because James Gunn is a talented storyteller. And it feels in some ways kind of like Star Wars, in that they're kind of on spaceships, and they're kind of visiting different places and then introducing us to these different worlds and species with a sense of adventure and fun. But yeah, I mean, it's always kind of a challenge to talk about a movie like this as a film critic, because people who are into these films already kind of know what it is, and there's only so much you can say.
right And I think it's also worth adding that with these films and these series, they just they kind of plant all these Easter eggs, and and I think because of the pandemic, this kind of problem for me anyway has been exacerbated because I'm not watching the series, and to be fair, this is actually quite an accessible film. It's a simple plot. We don't have these collision of different universes, but still, you can tell that there's a lot in there that I'm just not aware of, or I can't really fully appreciate, because there's just so much going on in the MC universe, and it feels like I'm missing out. But does it mean I go on to Disney Plus and check out all the series? No, because there's better things to do.
Of course. Okay, well, still, it is the end of a chapter, it seems, at least. That was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Perhaps there will be spin-offs in the future, who knows? But for now, that is where that series ends. Now, let's move on to the second part of our spotlight this week, with the Marvel release apparently scaring off other major releases in Korea this week. We thought we'd talk about the world's most prestigious film festival, which is scheduled to begin again in a few days. We are, of course, talking about the Cannes Film Festival. Korean films have, of course, enjoyed much success at Cannes over the years, but unfortunately this year's main competition does not feature any Korean films. Still, quite a few Korean stars and directors will be walking the red carpet to present films in other sections of the festival, I believe. Darcy, so can you tell us more? Which Korean films are drawing the most buzz ahead of the festival this year? Yeah,
it is a bit of a contrast from last year, because last year we had two major awards that were awarded to Korean films. Park Chan-wook, Best Director for Decision to Leave. Song Kang-ho won Best Actor for his role in Broker. And actually, Song Kang-ho is back in Cannes, and I think that's the film, among the 5 Korean features that are going to the festival, I think his movie Cobweb is the one that's drawing the most anticipation or attention. It's featured as an out-of-competition screening, like a special screening. Film set in the 1970s. Song Kang-ho plays a film director who, believes he has it in him to create a real masterpiece, and yet he faces all kinds of hurdles, from censorship to just kind of the general haphazard state of the Korean film industry in those days. The director is Kim Ji-yoon, who has been to Cannes several times before. He's never quite cracked the competition, but his previous movies, A Bittersweet Life and The Good, the Bad, the Weird, also received the same kind of out-of-competition screening. And then I think that, I guess fans of the classic director Kim Gi-young are particularly curious about this film because it's his films in particular that have inspired this new movie in some ways. So,
Right, such as he's the director of The Housemaid, right?
That's right. Crazy. Brilliant and crazy director.
Okay, so Cobweb looks like it's going to be the most significant Korean film to look out for. But Jason, what about the other Korean films that are scheduled to premiere there as well?
Yeah, no, it's going to be busy, I think, for Korean talent. There are 4 other feature films and 2 short films as well. In Uncertain Regards, which is a separate competition for new filmmakers. So we have in that competition debut director Kim Chang-hoon, and he'll present his film Hopeless. And there's also a big kind of disaster movie. I'm really curious about this one called Project Silence. There's this kind of certainly a trend of disaster films in Korea, and this is screening in in the midnight section, the screening section, which is interesting because literally every year since Train to Busan in 2016, they've had a Korean film in this section, sometimes 2. So when they first announced this section, announced the lineup, there was no Korean film. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe that's we won't see so many Korean films in this part of the program anymore. But no, actually there was one film. And then we also have Jason Yu's Sleep. Jason Yu's worked with director Bong Joon-ho on Okja. So I'm curious to see that. So that's screening in the Critics Week.
Okay.
And that's one of the sidebars. And there's also another sidebar, Director's Fortnight. And we've got Hong Sang-soo's, well, what is this? His 30th film? Is it right, Darcy?
30, yeah.
Yeah, In Our Time. That's the closing film. And then we've got, we've got 2 short films in Cine Foundation, from the 2 big film schools in Korea. So CAFA, the Korean Academy of Film Arts, and also the Korea National University of Arts. So, yeah, lots to, to watch what's going on in the Cannes Film Festival.
Sure, there seems to be a lot going on, 5 films, but Darcy, it is a shame that there's no Korean films in the main competition section this year. Is it just one of those years, or is it a sign to pointing at something else?
I don't know. The competition section is really hard to break into. And some people criticize Cannes for not being a little more flexible in terms of who they let in, because it does, for the most part, seem to be the same names year after year. And occasionally they'll pull in a new director from this or that country. But, if we look back over, the past 10, 15 years, it is mostly, the Park Chan-wooks, the Bong Joon-hos, the Lee Chang-dong who get into competition. And, I do know that there were people in the film industry who were really hopeful that Kim Ji-yoon might kind of graduate to the competition this year. And yeah, it didn't quite happen. So that was a bit of a disappointment for him. But just being invited to the festival is a big honor, and they'll get a real showcase of the film. So, in that sense, it's, still an honor.
Jason, are you excited about the lineup?
Oh, absolutely. It is a shame that Kim Ji-yoon wasn't able to crack into the competition, much like Naung Jin, he hasn't made it into the competition either. But that being said, though, and Darcy's absolutely right, it's very much a kind of a competition for the auteurs, and Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, they're the kind of the auteurs of Korean cinema. Although to be fair, so is Kim Ji-yoon. But 5 Korean films, that's quite a few, and there's always surprises. And I think what was notable about this year was that there were a number of surprises. So, it sucks for me because I'm in Korea and I won't get to see these films for a little while. Darcy's, I think, perhaps seen some of them already. But it's So I'm curious to see them, and so I'm sat, looking at the reaction on Twitter, and I'm like, no, that's not fair. I don't get to see this film.
Maybe one year, I'm sure you'll be able to go and get that invitation.
Yeah, and we follow Korean cinema like all year long, and then this is the one part of the year when, the biggest films are released, and then we can't see them because we're in Seoul, and then the films are in Cannes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to wrap it up there. Jason, Darcy, thank you for your reviews and your thoughts as always. Take care and have a good weekend.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Take care. Bye-bye.